I'm a park ranger in a forest where time rewinds every morning. The first loop. Introduction. The forest doesn't whisper. It screams, but only I seem to hear it. Every morning I wake up in the ranger station, coffee hot, radio crackling, birds chirping exactly the same way they did the day before. Nothing ever changes. Not the weather. Not the schedule. Not even the time on the broken wall clock, stuck eternally at 6:59 a.m., just 1 minute before everything resets. I used to think it was a trick of exhaustion, maybe cabin fever. But I've been keeping a journal, and what I've written terrifies me more than anything this forest could show me. Because the forest remembers. And it doesn't want me to leave. My name is Daniel Kerrigan, and I'm the only park ranger assigned to Black Hollow National Forest. It's a dense, misty woodland tucked into the mountains, off the maps for most tourists, barely spoken of in ranger meetings. I was transferred here 6 months ago after requesting solitude. Got it. More than I ever asked for. First, it felt like paradise. No crowds. No emergencies. Just endless forest, quiet nights, and routine patrols. But that illusion shattered on what I call day zero. It started with a scream. I was on my usual patrol route, the South Loop near the Pine Ridge, when I heard it. A single, blood-curdling scream that echoed through the trees. I ran toward the sound, boots pounding the dirt, radio clutched in one hand. No one responded on the other end, even though I was sure I heard another voice, a whisper almost playful. "You're too late." I found a clearing I hadn't seen before. It wasn't on any of the maps. Perfectly circular. Grass burned black at the center, like something massive had scorched the ground. I stepped into it without thinking. Cold wind hit me. Everything tilted. The sky twisted. I stumbled, and then it was morning again. Back in the ranger station. Coffee hot. Clock blinking 6:59 a.m. My notepad blank. I chalked it up to a dream. Maybe I'd fallen asleep in the woods and imagined the whole thing. But as I got up and went about my morning, I noticed something strange. My boots were muddy. Pine needles clung to my uniform, and there was ash on my fingers. That was the first time I suspected something was wrong. By the third day I was sure. No matter what I did, no matter how far I wandered, how many notes I took, how many trees I marked, everything returned to how it was when I'd first arrived. The tree I carved my initials into. Smooth bark by morning. The branch I broke to test the theory. Whole again. My journal entries vanished each dawn, unless I hid the book outside the station, far from the forest's reach. The animals were the first to notice something was off. Deer would watch me with wide, unblinking eyes. Birds circled but never flew beyond the canopy. One fox followed me from a distance every day, never breaking eye contact. I tried to chase it once. It vanished behind a tree, and didn't reappear. Hours later I found it again, staring from a hill, exactly where it always was. It wasn't just me stuck in this loop. Everything was. But the forest wasn't just resetting, it was aware. That realization came when I found the girl. She wasn't supposed to be there. The station never gets visitors, not unless there's a serious emergency or a scheduled inspection. But there she was, sitting on the station porch at exactly 7 a.m., as if she'd materialized from thin air. Pale, barefoot, hair matted with leaves and dirt. No memory of how she got here. Said her name was Lila. "I think I died," she said, almost casually. But then I woke up again. I didn't know what to say. She was cold to the touch. Her eyes were distant, like someone who hadn't slept in years. That day we tried to hike out together. Packed gear, made a plan, marked the trail with orange ribbons. We didn't make it more than 2 miles before the fog rolled in. Suffocating. Wallowed the trail. Even the sound of our footsteps was muted. Then Lila started screaming. Screaming like I'd heard on day zero. She said they were coming. "Who?" I asked, holding her arms, trying to calm her. "The ones who remember," she whispered. "The ones who don't want us to." I lost her in the fog. 1 minute she was there, the next gone. I spent the rest of the day searching, calling her name. No tracks. No answer. By dusk, the sun bled red through the trees, and I stumbled back to the station defeated. Just before the clock struck 7 a.m. again, I heard her scream, distant, familiar, and horrifyingly real. Then everything reset. She was gone. The porch was empty. No sign of her in the station logs. But the ash on the floor where she sat, still there. Just enough to know she had existed. Somehow. That's when the nightmares started. Every night right before dawn I see them. Figures in the trees. Not quite human. They move like shadows, jittering and glitching between branches. Their faces, when I catch glimpses, are blurred, twisted like they've been recorded over too many times. They whisper my name. Not angrily, almost sadly, like they're warning me. But warning me about what? I've stopped sleeping. Every minute counts now. Every clue I gather might vanish by morning. I hide messages to myself in locked boxes, carved into trees outside the forest's core, hoping they'll remain. Some do. Most don't. But the worst part. Sometimes, I remember dying. I remember slipping and cracking my head on the rocks by the river. I remember a bear attack, those eyes before it lunged. I remember freezing to death in the snow when I took a wrong turn and lost my pack. None of those things happened today. Or yesterday. But I remember them. My body resets, but my mind. It's collecting every death. And I can feel them like bruises on my soul. Last night, I dreamt of a cabin deep in the woods, one I'd never seen before. Firelight in the window. A radio playing distorted voices. I followed the trail in the dream, found the cabin door wide open. Inside was a wall covered in photographs. My photographs. Me standing by the station. Me with Lila. Me bleeding on the ground. At the center of the wall, a single phrase burned into wood. Time is the forest. It grows around you. I woke up gasping. Blood under my fingernails. The map on the wall in my station. Updated. Somehow. A small black dot now marked the edge of the forest. The dream wasn't a dream. It was an instruction. Today I'm going there. Conclusion. The forest doesn't just reset time. It feeds on it. Grows roots in every second. Buries you in your own past until you can't tell what's real and what's leftover memory. I'm just starting to understand it. And whatever is hiding in those woods doesn't want me to. But now I know one thing for sure. Time isn't broken here. It's hunting. And I may already be out of it. The cabin in the trees. I started hiking before the sun was fully up, the map in my hand trembling with each gust of wind that threaded through the trees. The black dot on the map. It hadn't been there before yesterday's dream. And even though I couldn't explain how it had appeared, or how it seemed to know where I needed to go, I followed it. The forest looked different today. The air was still too still. The usual hum of insects and birds was gone. It felt like I was being watched, not just by something alive, but by the trees themselves. The bark seemed to pulse, and the wind chattered through the leaves in a language I almost understood. Almost. 2 hours into the hike, I found a narrow trail leading off the main path. It shouldn't have been there, but I recognized the split in the trees from my dream. That sliver of light through the pine branches, the crooked birch tree with its bark peeling like old skin. I stepped onto the trail, and everything behind me shifted. The forest closed in. My compass spun wildly, useless. I checked the GPS blank screen. Kept walking. Eventually, I reached a clearing I'd never seen before, even after months of patrolling these woods. There, hidden beneath a thick veil of moss and ivy, was the cabin. It looked ancient, almost as if the forest had grown around it like a tumor. Wooden slats blackened with rot, windows fogged and cracked, the roof sagging under a heavy coat of dead leaves. The front door stood slightly ajar, swinging gently even though there was no wind. I stepped inside. The air was heavy with the smell of mildew and smoke. Dust hung in the air, suspended like ash. The wooden floor creaked underfoot, groaning with each step. The walls were covered in old photographs. Hundreds of them. All of me. In every photo I looked slightly different. Different uniforms, different facial hair, different injuries. One photo showed me with a deep gash across my cheek. Another showed me holding a severed hand, my face blank and numb. In one I was dead, sprawled in the dirt, my eyes wide open, staring. And in every single one behind me in the background there was something. Watching. A figure in the woods. Its face always blurred. Its arms impossibly long. There was a table in the middle of the room with an old radio. The same radio from my dream. It sputtered with static until a voice broke through. "You have 13 deaths left," it said. A woman's voice. Kind even. "After that you stay." I stared at the radio. "What do you mean?" I asked. "Stay where?" The static resumed. No reply. I turned back toward the wall, and that's when I saw her again. Layla. She stood in the corner of the room, eyes wide. Hair wet like she'd just come in from a storm. Her skin was pale, almost gray, and her lips were trembling. "You weren't supposed to find this place yet," she said. I didn't know how to respond. "You were gone. You disappeared in the fog." She nodded slowly. "I always disappear. That's how the loop resets. One of us dies, the day restarts. But the cabin? This place is in the cracks. It's not supposed to exist. Then how did I find it?" "You're breaking through," she whispered. "The more deaths you remember, the more you carry with you. The forest can't fully erase you anymore." I walked closer to her, but she backed away. "You have to be careful. They'll know you're close." "Who?" She looked at the radio. "The things in the trees. They were once people too. Rangers, hikers, campers. Anyone who stayed too long. They lost count. They forgot who they were. Now they serve the forest. They enforce the rules." "What rules?" "You get 13 deaths," she said. 13 chances to make it out." "Make it out how?" Before she could answer, the floorboards behind me creaked. I turned around but no one was there. When I looked back, Lila was gone. Only a single photograph remained where she'd stood. Picked it up. It was her, hanging from a tree, eyes wide, mouth frozen in a scream. And behind her, the blurred figure again. Closer this time. Almost touching her shoulder. I stuffed the photo into my pack and turned to leave. But the door had vanished. In its place was a blank wall. I walked toward it, running my fingers along the wood. No seams. No way out. Then the lights went out. Not that there had been any actual lights, but whatever thin daylight had been seeping through the window suddenly vanished. I was plunged into pitch black. I could hear them breathing. Not one breath. Dozens. All around me. And then a voice whispered from inches away. 10. A hand gripped my shoulder. Claws dug into my skin. I screamed. Then I was falling. The ground beneath me collapsed and I plunged into darkness. I landed hard, pain exploding through my ribs and knees. I was back in the forest. No sign of the cabin. Just trees and moss and endless fog. I was breathing fast, heart pounding. And the clock in the ranger station tower somewhere behind the trees chimed once. Just once. 6:59 a.m. I made it through the loop again. But something had changed. My shoulder throbbed, and when I looked, blood had soaked through my shirt. It hadn't reset this time. I ran back to the station. Inside everything looked the same. Coffee hot. Radio crackling. Wall clock frozen. But my boots were still muddy. My shoulder still bleeding. And the photograph of Lila still in my backpack. I sat at the desk trying to catch my breath. Then the radio sparked again. "You have 9 deaths left," the voice said. Froze. 9. I whispered. "It was 13 before. You died 4 times before you started keeping count," it replied. "Now you're on the final stretch." The line went dead. I stared out the window. The trees were moving. Not swaying in the wind. Walking. And I could see them now. Dozens of tall, twisted figures blending with the trunks. Watching me. One of them raised a hand and pointed toward the north trail. I didn't know why, but I understood what it meant. It was time to go back. Back into the forest. Back into the loop. Because somewhere out there, past the trees and the silence and the deaths, there had to be a way out. There had to be. The man who remembered too much. The North Trail wasn't marked on any of our maps. I knew that because I'd hiked every inch of this forest, documented every bend in the trees, every fallen log, every rock face. But as I walked past the ranger station and stepped into the woods, the path unfolded beneath my feet like it had always been there, buried under time itself. The trees grew denser here, their trunks twisted into strange spirals, their branches high and claw-like. The air felt thinner, like I was climbing a mountain, though I knew the elevation hadn't changed. Each step felt heavier, like something was pressing down on my shoulders, trying to force me back. But I kept walking. I thought I was alone until I heard it. Footsteps behind me. Soft, deliberate, too synchronized to be animal. Turn. Nothing. Then again, crunch. This time I spun around and shouted, "Who's there?" A figure stepped out from behind a tree. An old man. His uniform matched mine, though the patches were faded and torn. His beard was overgrown, wild, and his eyes were sunken into deep sockets that had seen far too much. "Another ranger," he said in a voice that crackled like dry leaves. "How many deaths you got left?" I hesitated. 9. He nodded solemnly. "I lost count after 3. That's when things started slipping." Slipping. He walked closer. Memories. Rules. Even my own name. I wrote it all down once, thinking it might help. But the forest finds what you try to keep. And it burns it. He held out a hand. It was missing 3 fingers. "They took these the last time I tried to leave. Told me I was cheating. Told me I wasn't playing fair." I stared at him, unsure if he was real or part of whatever trick the forest had decided to play. "Who are they?" I asked. He looked up into the trees. "The Watchers. Forest spirits. Guardians. Cursed souls. Pick your name. Doesn't matter. All I know is, they enforce the loop." He gestured toward the trail. "You're headed toward the wound." "What's the wound?" He smiled, but there was no humor in it. "It's the part of the forest that remembers everything. The place where time broke. The place where the first ranger died and stayed dead." I swallowed hard. "You've seen it." He nodded slowly. "Seen it. Walked through it. Lost my face in there once." He pulled up the edge of his shirt, revealing a long scar across his ribs that pulsed like it was still fresh. "I came back, but I wasn't the same. I started hearing voices. Seeing other versions of myself. One of them tried to kill me." I took a step back. He held up a hand. "Relax. I'm not him. Not today." Then his eyes glazed over. "But I might be tomorrow." Suddenly, he leaned in close, grabbing my shoulder. "Don't trust the woman. She's been here too long." "You mean Lila?" He didn't answer. Instead, he started mumbling to himself, words that made no sense. Something about keys, blood, fire in the trees. Then he turned and wandered back into the forest, vanishing between the shadows like he'd never been there at all. I was alone again. Or so I thought. Kept walking. Hours passed. The sun never moved. I reached a ravine that cut the earth like a jagged scar. A rope bridge stretched across it, old and swaying, wood slats rotted and frayed. On the other side I saw movement, a flicker of red like fabric. Coat maybe. I stepped onto the bridge. It groaned under my weight, swaying with every footstep. Below, the ravine stretched endlessly downward, filled not with rock or water, but trees, upside down, their roots writhing like tentacles. Halfway across, the bridge snapped. One of the slats beneath my foot gave way, and I plunged. I hit the trees. Not branches, trunks. And then I was inside them. Not in the ravine. In the forest. But everything was reversed. The ground was above me. The sky below. I was hanging from the world's ceiling. I blinked. Suddenly I was back on the bridge on the other side, kneeling, panting. Another loop. No, this was different. I stood and looked around. The forest here was darker. Answer. The trees bled sap that looked like oil. The ground was soft, spongy. Every step made a sucking sound like the earth was trying to pull me under. Then I saw the door. In the middle of a clearing, standing by itself, just a door. No frame. No walls. Just a wooden door with a brass knob. I approached. On the door, written in charcoal, was a message. Enter to remember. Leave to forget. I touched the knob. It was warm. I turned it. Behind the door was a room. Familiar. My bedroom back home. Photos of my parents on the dresser. My guitar in the corner. The smell of old coffee and shampoo. But something was wrong. Everything was too still. Too perfect. I walked in. The door slammed shut behind me. The lights dimmed. And then the room was on fire. Not literal fire, emotional fire. The walls wept smoke. The pictures melted. My memories peeled away like wallpaper. I couldn't breathe. Then I heard her voice. Layla. She was crying. Don't forget me again. I turned and saw her in the mirror. Her reflection reached out. You said you'd find me, she whispered. You promised. I'm trying, I said. She shook her head. You're still playing their game. Still counting deaths like it means something. But they cheat. They always cheat. Then the mirror shattered. A blast of heat hit me and I fell backward. Right into the forest again. The door was gone. And the sun was finally moving. It was setting. Check my watch. 6:59 p.m. 12 hours. Not the loop. Not yet. I sat on a stump and tried to piece it together. I'd met a man who might be me in the future. I'd seen a place that stole reality. And I'd heard Lila again. Inside a memory that wasn't mine anymore. And now, the watchers were closing in. I could feel it. The trees whispered names. Lila's. The old man's. And something else. A name I didn't recognize. But it sent shivers down my spine. Marrow. That was the word the forest kept repeating. A figure stepped out of the trees. Not Lila. Not the old man. Something tall, pale, and wrapped in moss and bark. Its face had no features. Just a smooth surface like blank porcelain. It tilted its head at me. Then it pointed to the sky. Storm clouds gathered in seconds. Thunder cracked. The forest roared. And everything went black. When I opened my eyes. 6:59 a.m. Back at the station. Again. But this time. I was already bleeding. And my fingernails were packed with dirt. Like I'd been digging. I turned to the desk. A note was there in my handwriting. Do not trust the next version of yourself. And beneath it, 8 deaths left. The version that wasn't me. The blood on my hands wasn't dry. That was the first thing I noticed after waking up. After the forest rewound time again. It pooled beneath my nails, thick and rust-colored. My sleeves were damp with it. And my chest ached like I'd been hit by something heavy. I checked the mirror in the corner of the ranger station. A long cut ran from my left ear to my chin. I hadn't had that yesterday. Or today. Or whatever this was. I looked at the note again. Do not trust the next version of yourself. I didn't remember writing it. But it was my handwriting. My style. My pen. The forest had made liars out of my memories before. But this felt urgent. I stepped outside. Everything looked the same. Dew on the grass. Birds singing. Trees swaying in slow motion like they'd been rehearsing the same dance for centuries. And the same path, winding into the woods, innocent and quiet. But I didn't follow it. Not this time. Instead, I walked to the west end of the clearing where I remembered an old supply shed. I hadn't used it in months. The forest had nearly swallowed it whole with creeping vines and moss, but I forced the door open. Inside were shovels, pickaxes, and rusted cans of kerosene. And a mirror. The mirror shouldn't have been there. It stood in the back of the shed, untouched by time, spotless and pristine. Too clean for a place that hadn't seen sunlight in years. I stared into it. First it was me. Then it wasn't. The figure in the glass smiled, a slow, twitching grin. His eyes were wider, pupils too small. The scar across his cheek was fresh. He raised his hand and I followed, unsure if I was mirroring him or he was mirroring me. Then he mouthed something. I leaned closer to read his lips. 7 left. Blinked. The mirror shattered. I stumbled back as shards rained down, slicing my arm. The air grew heavy with static. From behind me, a sound like bones cracking echoed through the shed. He turned and saw me. Not in the mirror. In the room. Standing in the doorway. His face was identical. His uniform stained with blood. My blood. "Stop," I said, backing into the wall. "What are you?" He smiled. "I'm the better version." He stepped closer. "I'm the one who figured it out." "Figured what out?" "How to win," he said, voice sharp as broken glass. "How to escape. The deaths don't reset your body. Just your time. Leave enough pieces behind, and eventually you can come back whole." I shook my head. "You're lying." "Am I?" he said, tilting his head. "Then why do I remember more than you? Why do I know where the wound bleeds and where the watchers sleep?" He reached into his coat and pulled out something. A small, rotten object. Finger. "I've been collecting the parts," he said. "Leaving them where the rewind won't touch them." My stomach turned. "You're insane." He shrugged. "Maybe. But I'm closer than you'll ever be." Then he lunged. We fought. The shed exploded into motion. Tools crashing, blood smearing across the walls. He was stronger, faster. Every punch landed like he knew where I was going to move before I did. 'Cause he did. 'Cause he was me. I grabbed a rusted hook and swung it, catching him in the jaw. He staggered back, hissing, and I took the chance to run. Out of the shed. Into the woods. I didn't look back. Branches tore at my clothes. Roots reached for my ankles. But I didn't stop running until I hit a clearing I didn't recognize. At its center was a massive stone circle. Carved runes lined the edge, glowing faintly. In the middle, a wooden table, an altar, stained black with something ancient. I stepped closer. There were objects placed carefully on the surface. Teeth, buttons, fingernails, bones. And a single eye. Still wet. Something inside me remembered this place. Not a memory I made. A memory I inherited. Flash. Me or a version of me dragging a body here. Whispering a chant. Cutting flesh and placing it in the center. "Offerings," a voice said behind me. I spun around. It was Lila. But not the one I knew. This version of her wore a mask made of bark, and her eyes were milky white. She held a lantern that burned with blue fire. "They built this to feed the forest," she said, voice hollow. "To bribe the watchers. It worked for a while." Backed away. "Why are you here?" She stepped closer. "To warn you. Before your other self finishes what you started." "I didn't start anything." She tilted her head. "But you did. Long ago. The first loop wasn't an accident. You made a deal." I stared at her, unsure what to believe. What kind of deal? To see her again. "Who?" Her face softened. "Your sister." The forest went quiet. Dead silent. I hadn't heard that name in years. Hadn't let myself remember. My little sister Mara. She drowned in the lake when we were kids. I was supposed to be watching her. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "That wasn't me." "It was," she said. "And when the watchers offered you a chance to undo it, you took it. But they never said how many rewinds it would cost." I shook my head. No, I never. But even as I denied it, I remembered. The water. Her scream. My feet frozen in place. And the whispering that came afterward. "We can give her back. But time will be your prison." Lila stepped aside and pointed to the altar. "She's not gone. She's waiting. But only one of you can reach her. You or the version you just fought." A wind swept through the clearing. The runes flared brighter. Footsteps crunched behind me. He was back. The other me. His face was bruised now. One eye swollen shut. But he smiled anyway. "We're almost there," he said. "I'm not letting you take her," I said. He pulled something from his belt. A knife. Curved. Bone handle. blade black as obsidian. I already did, he said. You're just the shadow. He lunged again. But this time I was ready. We clashed in the clearing, knocking over the altar, scattering the offerings. The stone glowed red beneath our feet. The forest screamed with us, trees cracking, birds fleeing. I drove him back, blow after blow, until we stood at the cliff's edge. He laughed, blood in his teeth. You'll just wake up again, he said. And so will I, forever. Maybe, I said. But not today. And I tackled him over the edge. I fell. Through the trees. Through the earth. Through the memory. And everything went black. I opened my eyes. 6:59 a.m. Back at the station. Alone. Again. But something was different. My reflection in the window smiled. And I didn't. My fingernails were clean. My arms unscarred. And the cut across my cheek was gone. But in my chest, there was a dull ache, like something important had been ripped out. On the desk, a single word had been burned into the wood. 6. The watcher beneath the lake. I didn't want to get up. The clock read 6:59 a.m., ticking toward the start of another rewind. But I sat frozen in the ranger station, staring at the word burned into the desk. The number of days, of versions I had left. Or something worse. Something inside me had shifted. My skin felt wrong. My limbs too light. Like I was wearing myself. I splashed water on my face. It smelled faintly metallic, and when I looked in the mirror again, my reflection blinked a second too late. I wasn't alone in me anymore. The forest was quieter than usual. The birds didn't sing. The trees didn't move. Everything held its breath. I checked the supply closet for my map. But it wasn't where I left it. In its place was a folded piece of paper. No handwriting, just a sketch. A spiral of trees leading to a black lake in the center. And the words. Beneath it, the first deal waits to be broken. I hadn't seen that lake in years. Mara drowned there. I used to hike out with her when we were kids. It was the first place I felt peace. And the last place I saw her alive. I folded the note and tucked it in my jacket. Whatever this was, it started there. The trail had overgrown, but I remembered the way. As I walked, I noticed strange things. Dead animals perfectly preserved like taxidermy. Branches bent into symbols I didn't recognize. Echoes whispering my name. Jonah. When I reached the lake, the water was black glass. Motionless. It didn't reflect the sky. It reflected nothing. I approached the edge, and a shiver crawled down my spine. The forest behind me faded into mist. I could feel its eyes. Watching. Waiting. The water rippled. Then a shape rose. Hand. Bill. Childlike. Then a second hand. And then her face. Mura. Her lips were blue. Hair clinging to her cheeks. But her eyes opened, and she smiled. Jonah, she said softly. I dropped to my knees, not caring that the ground was soaked. I'm here, I said, voice trembling. I've been trying to find you. She tilted her head. Why? Because I lost you. Because it was my fault. Her eyes darkened. No, she said. You gave me to them. I shook my head. No, that's not. But something inside remembered. Not just the drowning. Not just the helpless guilt. But the whisper that followed in the dark. One life for another. She won't suffer. You will. I thought I had hallucinated it. But I made the deal. And she had paid the price. Mara climbed from the water, her movements wrong. Joints bending too far. Her skin steaming in the air. As she stood before me, her form shifted. Taller now, older. She looked like she might have if she had grown up. And her eyes weren't hers anymore. They were black pits, swirling with stars. You promised them time, she said. Now they want your body too. I backed away, stumbling. What are they? Asked. She raised her hand and pointed to the lake. The watchers sleep beneath, she said. And they remember everything. Even the lies you tell yourself. The water behind her churned. Something vast stirred below. Shape. Mouth. No. 1,000 mouths yawning wide, layered in teeth. Rose. A tower of flesh and bone, eyes like moons blinking in slow patterns. It made no sound, but I heard it inside my skull. Your time is nearly spent. I turned and ran. But the trees moved with me, twisting, changing. The forest refused to let me leave. I broke through a wall of thorns and came out. At the station. Again. The clock on the wall read 7 a.m. But this time it didn't tick forward. Held. Frozen. Outside everything was still. Then the station door creaked open. And I walked in. Not another version. First. He looked older. Weathered. His eyes were dull, skin grayed. He looked at me like someone who'd already buried hope. You made the deal, he said. I know, I replied. I've tried everything to break it. Every version, every path. Burned the forest. Killed the watchers. Killed myself. I swallowed. And, he smiled bitter. Still here. I stepped closer. Then what's left? He reached into his coat and pulled out a black stone, etched with symbols. Pulsed faintly. This is the key, he said. The last gift they gave me. What does it do? Ends the loops, he whispered. All of them. I stared at it. A way out. Or another trap. He placed it on the desk. But, he said, there's a price. Time has to consume something. When? If you destroy the loops, you destroy every version of you. All your memories. All your regrets. The forest forgets you. The world forgets you. And she. He looked toward the window. She never comes back. I clenched my fists. This is my punishment. He nodded. But it doesn't have to be ours. I grabbed the stone. It burned in my palm, searing flesh. I'm ending it, I said. He didn't stop me. I walked outside. The sky had split. Above me, a great eye opened in the heavens. Time buckled. I crushed the stone in my hand. The world screamed. The trees caught fire. The lake boiled. The wind howled with forgotten names. And all around me, echoes of myself began to burn. 10, 50, 100 versions collapsing into ash. I felt my bones crack. My breath shorten. But I smiled. 'Cause I saw her. One last time. Whole. Alive. Smiling without fear. She reached toward me. Thank you, she whispered. And then she faded. And so did I. Into nothing. Into silence. Into freedom. The tree that remembers. The wind whispered my name long before I had a mouth to hear it. There was no sky. No ground. Only the slow, spiraling sensation of becoming. And then breath. I woke up gasping, not in the ranger station, not in the forest, but buried beneath roots. Dirt crumbled in my mouth. My lungs burned with decay. I clawed upward, breaking through soil and tangled vines until I burst into the open air. The forest stretched before me. Familiar and wrong. The trees were taller now. Massive and ancient, their trunks twisting in shapes that mimicked the curvature of spines. The bark was black. Their leaves shimmered like fish scales. And at their base grew fungi shaped like human ears. I stood on shaking legs, heart hammering. How was I alive? I remembered crushing the stone. Ending the loops. I remembered disappearing. But something had pulled me back. Something old. I turned in a slow circle. There was no station. No path. Only a single structure jutting out from the woods like a wound. A tree, wider than any redwood, with bark that bled black sap. Throbbed like a heartbeat. Etched into its surface were faces. Dozens of them. Screaming, crying, sleeping. All different versions of me. The tree that remembers. It whispered. Knew me. Had kept me. Time hadn't ended. It had shifted. Consolidated. I hadn't destroyed the loops. I had fed them. And now I was their guardian. I stumbled backward, bile rising in my throat. Jonah. The voice was behind me. Turned slowly. It was Mara again. But not the child. Not the drowned version. Not even the adult form I had seen in the lake. She was ageless now. Pale as moonlight. Her eyes gone. In their place. swirling voids filled with stars. You broke the deal, she said. They couldn't consume you. So they made you one of them. I took a step back. This isn't real. She smiled. No, Jonah. This is the most real. You're outside time now. Between versions. A root in the forest's mind. I felt my hands tremble. My skin pulsed with something beneath it, like veins full of whispers. Why me? Because you made the first choice. You gave me away. You offered time a soul. But I tried to undo it. I tried to save you. She touched the tree gently, where a screaming version of my face twisted in agony. No choice is ever undone. Not truly. The tree groaned. A face peeled open from its bark. Not mine. My father's. Eyes weeping sap. Mouth full of roots. I reeled. I never. He died before. Mara's voice darkened. You don't remember. The hike you begged for. The slip. The silence afterward. They took him too. All these deals, Jonah. All these bargains with time. I fell to my knees. The forest around me shifted. Every tree bore a face. Every leaf a memory. It wasn't a forest. It was a graveyard. And I was the caretaker. I want out, I whispered. There is no out, Mara said, kneeling beside me. There's only in. You've gone too deep. You're no longer walking the forest. You are the forest. The ground beneath me pulsed with heat. Voices chanted in unison. Time must be fed. I saw it now. The loops were never prison cells, they were meals. And I'd been the main course for centuries. Every reset, every rewind, every version, consumed. The tree that remembers began to creak open like a massive door. From its hollow core light spilled, red and pulsing like the glow of coals. Mara turned to me. This is your final choice. She extended a hand. Come inside. Forget everything. Become the root. The loop will end. No more versions. No more selves. Just silence. And if I say no? She looked up at the sky, where a second sun now pulsed and bled. Then the forest grows. Time ripples outward. It won't just be you. It'll find new minds. New bargains. Children. Cities. The world will loop. I clenched my fists. This was a trap. It was a gift, she said. But you overfed it. I stared into the tree's core. Inside I saw peace. I saw forgetting. No pain. No choices. No Mara. I stepped backward. No. Mara's eyes narrowed. You would doom them all. No, I said. I'll carry the burden. But I won't give in. The forest shuddered. Branches thrashed. Roots snapped. And from the soil rose a watcher. Tall as a tower. Made of bones and shadows. It spoke not with a voice, but with time itself. I felt memories leak from my ears. Images flicker behind my eyes. Every version of me dying. Burning. Begging. It towered above me. The eye of a god and the hunger of the void. But I stood tall. And I spoke its name. Yoral. The watcher froze. Even Mara seemed startled. You remember, she whispered. I do, I said. Because in one of those loops I found the book. I saw the root words. I learned your name. The watcher shrieked. Reality cracked. And for a brief moment I was free. I turned to the tree that remembers. And I burned it. I set myself on fire first. My blood became oil. My skin peeled into flame. The memory faces screamed as I ignited their prison. And with me the tree. The watcher screamed louder. The forest withered. Mara stepped back, her form unraveling. You fool, she whispered. Without the tree, there's no forest. I smiled through flame. That's the point. And everything turned to ash. Then, darkness. Weightless. Breathless. A single sound echoed in the void. Then nothing. Ashes that whisper. I awoke not with breath, but with silence. A stillness so thick it felt like I was drowning in it. There was no forest. No sky. No tree. Only ash. A sea of it. I sat up slowly, the gray dust sloughing off my arms like old skin. My body felt brittle, light, as if made of the very particles around me. Everything was gray, monochrome. Even the air tasted like burnt memory. Had I done it? Was it over? I rose to my feet, my boots sinking inches into the powder. There were no stars, no sun. Just a dim, directionless glow that seemed to emanate from nowhere and everywhere. And then I heard it. A faint crackling like branches catching fire again. I turned in a slow circle. There, far in the distance, a silhouette moved. Human shape, loping uneven. Dragged one leg behind it. My breath hitched. Not Mara. Not the Watcher. Something else. Came closer. I didn't move. As it stepped into view, I saw its face. It was me. A version of me I didn't recognize. This one's mouth was sewn shut. Its eyes were burned out, but it still looked straight at me. Its hands were bound behind its back with thorned vines, and yet it kept walking, each step tearing deeper into its own skin. Backed away. The air around it shimmered like heat rising from blacktop. The figure didn't speak. It simply pointed. Behind me. Turned. In the ash stood a door. Freestanding, rotted, warped. No frame. No walls. Just a door in the middle of nothing. And carved across it, in letters that shifted as I stared. Only one can leave. I looked back at the other me. Still pointed. I took a step toward the door. The ash rose and curled around my ankles like smoke. My heart pounded louder with every inch I moved forward. The closer I got, the heavier I felt, like gravity was warping under me. The door pulsed. And then, another version of me stepped out from the gray beyond. This one was laughing. Shirtless. Skin carved with spiraling symbols that glowed faintly. His smile didn't reach his eyes. He carried a knife made of bone. Behind him others emerged. Parade of myself. Some sobbing. Some chanting. One dragging a bloody axe. One missing a jaw. Each of them stared at the door. Each of them wanted through. Froze. The truth slammed into me like a tidal wave. The loops never stopped. I didn't destroy them. I just merged them. All the timelines, every version of me, were collapsing inward, drawn to the same moment. The same choice. And only one version could move forward. The rest. The version with the stitched mouth stepped toward me. And suddenly it lunged. I threw up my arms just as it crashed into me, knocking us both into the ash. It clawed at my throat, vines cutting into its wrists as it struggled to strangle me. I slammed an elbow into its face and rolled away. Others began to move. The chanting one whispered something in a forgotten tongue. The axe-wielding one charged the door. But as it touched the wood, it burst into flames. Gone in an instant. The door chose. It wasn't open for all. Only for the one who was right. Whatever that meant. I stood again, bleeding from my cheek. I had to find a way to end it. Choose. Or be chosen. The stitched mouth version lunged again. I sidestepped, grabbed its neck, and snapped it before I could think. It collapsed in the ash, finally still. And then, to my horror, its body sank into the dust, pulled down like something beneath was waiting, hungry. The ground pulsed. The air turned red. Another me, this one burned from the waist down, crawled forward, begging with eyes full of terror. "I'm not the worst one," he gasped. "Let me go. Let him burn." He pointed behind me. I turned to see the version with the glowing knife standing inches away. He smiled. "I remember what we did," he said softly. "The one no loop could erase." My chest tightened. "No," he nodded. "That night in the cave. The girl with the broken leg. You said we should leave her. That she'd slow us down." I agreed. But we never talked about it again. Not in any version. My hands trembled. That memory had been buried deep. Before Mara. Before the ranger job. I whispered. "She was dying anyway." "Was she?" he asked. "Or did we just not want to carry her?" Backed away. "I was a kid. So was she." The knife glinted. "She's still waiting. And we're still running." Ran. Ash exploded beneath my feet. The others followed, screaming, laughing, weeping, dozens of me, all chasing one future. The door loomed ahead. It pulsed with a deep, hungry hum. One of me got close, a younger version with bandaged hands, and just as he reached for the handle, a tendril of shadow burst from the ground and devoured him. The door rejected him. Knew. The knife carrier was gaining. I couldn't fight them all, so I stopped. I turned around, and I screamed. I remember her name. They froze. All of them. Even the knife version. I whispered. It was Lacey. Lacey Moore. She cried when I left. I told her I'd come back. I never did. The air stilled. I thought forgetting made it easier. But I was wrong. She died alone. Afraid. And that version of me, that coward, doesn't deserve to walk through. The knife version stepped forward. You think guilt buys redemption? No, I said. But honesty does. I dropped to my knees and opened my arms. If the door chooses, then let it choose now. The others hesitated. One by one they stepped forward. The ground beneath them rippled. Some were swallowed. Some were set aflame. The rest turned to ash in the wind, until only two of us remained. Me. And the knife. He stared, then smiled faintly. Guess you win. He dropped the blade. It turned to sand before it hit the ground. And he walked into the ash, letting it take him. I turned to the door. No longer pulsed red. It was open, and inside I saw light. Not peace, not oblivion, but possibility. Life. A single version. I stepped through, and the door closed behind me. No sound, no ash, just breath, real full breath. I opened my eyes. The forest was green again. Birds chirped. The ranger station stood ahead. My hands were whole, my mind clear. I took a step forward, and froze. In the distance, a child's voice called out. Jonah! Turned slowly. There at the tree lean stood a girl with a broken leg, and she was smiling. The forest remembers. The trees were greener than I remembered. The moment I stepped through the door, the world shifted like a breath exhaled after holding it too long. Gone were the ashes, the twisted versions of myself, the nightmarish copies clawing at existence. I was back, fully, painfully, undeniably me. And there she was, Lacey. Still 13. Still limping. Still wearing the muddy yellow hoodie with the faded cartoon bear on the front, the one she'd worn when we first went missing in these woods as kids. But how? Jonah, she called again, her voice lighter than it had any right to be. You came back. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Her leg, the one that had broken all those years ago, was wrapped in a splint made of bark and vines, tied in intricate knots too perfect to be mine. Her hair was knotted with twigs and moss. Her skin was pale, eyes too dark. There was something off about her smile, like it was stitched on, pretending to be a memory. I looked for you, I whispered. She tilted her head. I know. I followed your footprints for days, but they kept disappearing. Then I met someone. She taught me how to stay here. Stay here. In the forest. She turned and beckoned me deeper into the trees. My boots crunched over soft leaves, but her feet made no sound at all. We walked in silence. The deeper we went, the more the forest felt wrong. Time didn't pass the way it should. Shadows fell in every direction at once. The same bird cried over and over from branches that twisted slightly when I looked too long. Finally we came to a clearing. At its center, a circle of stones, each one carved with a symbol I didn't recognize. Or maybe I did. They stirred something deep in my bones. This is where she brought me, Lacey said. The forest woman. Who is she? She doesn't have a name anymore. She gave it up to stay in the place between the rewinds. To become part of it. I took a step back. Lacey. What are you saying? She looked up at me. Her eyes had no whites, only black. Glossy. Like obsidian. You passed the test. You left the door. You chose. I didn't choose this. I wanted to escape the loops. She shook her head slowly. No, you chose truth. And the forest remembers those who tell it. The trees rustled. Not with wind. With intention. And then, from the shadows behind the stones, something stepped forward. It wasn't human. It looked like it had once tried to be. Long limbs wrapped in bark, a face of twisting vines and thorns, hair that hung in tangled mossy ropes. Where its eyes should be, there were hollows filled with faintly pulsing mushrooms. It smelled like wet soil and bone marrow. Lacey knelt. "I brought him, Mother." The thing leaned forward. Its mouth opened sideways. Inside not teeth, just darkness. "You left behind many versions of yourself," it said, in a voice that echoed like wind through dead trees. "But this one remembered." I tried to run. My legs wouldn't move. Roots curled up from the earth and held me in place. "I don't want this," I screamed. "I came through the door. I chose." The creature stepped closer. "You did. And now you will remain." Its hand touched my chest. Saw stars. But they weren't stars, they were memories. All of them. Loop's lives. Burials. Dreams. Fires. I fell to my knees, sobbing. "Why show me this?" Gasped. "Because you are the archive now," it said. Then it took Lacey's hand. "She is the keeper." I looked up at her. "You're not real." Her eyes softened. I was. But I waited too long. I became something else. The creature raised both hands. The trees bowed. The air shimmered. And I understood. The forest wasn't a place. It was a memory machine. A wound in time. An echo chamber that refused to let anything die until it was fully understood. And I had passed the trial. Not by surviving. By remembering. My skin cracked. My fingers turned to bark. My thoughts slowed, then grew larger, wider, spanning decades. I could feel every boot print ever pressed into the earth. Every scream swallowed by moss. Every bullet fired. Every lie told. Every truth buried in shallow soil. I was the forest now. And I would remember forever. Lacey leaned down and whispered, "Tomorrow time will rewind. A new ranger will arrive. He'll think it's just another day." Her smile flickered. "You'll guide him, won't you?" I tried to say no. But my voice was wind in leaves now. And the answer rustled through the trees. A stranger in his own skin. The sun split the trees with lazy morning light, same as every day. Birds chirped the same notes. Wind rolled across the forest in its usual rhythm. And still none of it felt real. I opened my eyes and found myself lying in the ranger's cabin again. My hands were dirty. My boots mud-caked. But not from yesterday's hike. No, this was new mud. The kind that clung in clumps like something had dragged me through the woods while I slept. My name tag still read Jonah. But it felt foreign now. Like reading a stranger's diary and finding it oddly familiar. Outside, the forest hummed. But it didn't hum for me anymore. I was the echo now, not the voice. I reached for my notebook on the desk, flipped through its pages. They were blank. Every entry I'd written over the last 100 loops. Gone. Wiped clean. I ran to the closet. The lockbox, missing. The compass that always pointed south. Snapped in half. Only one thing remained untouched. A mirror. And in it I saw the truth. The reflection didn't blink when I did. Its eyes stayed open. It smirked slightly when I frowned. And then, it whispered something against the glass. "You're not the one anymore." I stumbled back. The mirror didn't shatter. It rippled. Like water. And just beyond the reflection's surface, I saw her, Lacey. Sitting beneath the hanging vines in the stone circle. Smiling, tracing patterns into the soil with her finger. The forest had kept her. And now it had me too. I just hadn't caught up yet. I slammed a towel over the mirror and stumbled out the door. Maybe fresh air would clear my head. But the air outside tasted like breath held too long. Like someone else's exhale. The trees were watching. I don't mean that metaphorically. They had eyes. Not obvious ones, not cartoonishly gaping, no. They were more like folds in bark that followed me when I walked. Roots that shifted slightly with my weight. branches that angled toward my steps. I passed the perimeter trail where the boundary stones used to sit. Instead, there were bones now, arranged in symbols I didn't understand. I tried to retrace my steps from yesterday, find the stone circle, the place where I became part of this. But it was gone too. In its place stood a new path. Narrow, twisting, breathing. The trees leaned closer together to form an arch, dark and pulsing with something alive. I should have turned back, but my legs moved forward. Inside the tunnel of trees, time folded. Literally, I stepped once and it was dusk. Twice, and the sun was rising again. 3 steps in and I saw myself. Not metaphorically. Not in my head. An actual me walking in the opposite direction. Eyes wide, mouth open in horror. "Turn around," he shouted. I shouted. But neither of us could stop. I passed him. Past me. And then the world twisted and I was alone again. Only now the forest was quiet. Too quiet. Even the wind had stopped pretending. I reached a clearing. At its center stood something new. A figure in my uniform. Face turned away. Hat crooked. He was drawing something into the dirt with a stick. Looping symbols, circles intersecting with jagged triangles. "Hey!" called. "Who are you?" He didn't move. I circled around slowly. When I saw his face, I fell to my knees. It was me, but not a version I recognized. His skin was stitched in places like a patchwork quilt of forest things. Bark, moss, bone, and meat. His eyes were hollow sockets filled with crawling black beetles. And his smile, my smile, was stitched ear to ear with thread that shimmered like spider silk. "I told you," he said. "You're not the one anymore." He stood and dropped the stick. "I walked out of the loop," he said. "But something followed me." "What followed you?" Choke. He didn't answer. Instead, he reached toward me with both hands, and when I flinched, he didn't stop. One hand on my chest. One hand on my forehead. The world split. I saw every version of myself. All the deaths, all the rebirths. I saw the moment I stepped through the door, the moment I left Lacey behind, the moment I chose to remember. And I saw what the forest did when someone chose to forget. It recycled them. Turned them into guides. Into warnings. Into traps. "You were meant to stay," he said. His voice layered with thousands of echoes, each one a version of me. "But you tried to leave." Suddenly, the forest around us began to chant. Low, rhythmic. Like the groaning of old trees and whispers of lost souls. I screamed. The figure that wore my face tilted its head. "You're not the archive anymore." He stepped back. "You're just another copy." Then he stepped into me. The world went white. When I woke again, I was in the ranger's cabin. Fresh coffee. Birds chirping. A knock at the door. Opened it. A young man stood there in a crisp new ranger uniform. Backpack over one shoulder. "Morning," he said, smiling nervously. "I'm the new recruit. They told me to report to Ranger Jonah." I blinked. My reflection in the window grinned back at me. But it wasn't my grin. And somewhere deep inside the forest, something laughed. The forest remembers. The knock echoed long after the door had closed. The new ranger, his name was Travis, sat on the edge of the cot across from me, sipping the coffee I'd made without thinking. He talked a lot. Nervous types always did. About his drive up, the isolation of the posting, how he thought the forest was so peaceful. I just nodded. He didn't notice how I never blinked. Didn't notice the way the shadows under my eyes were darker than they should have been. Didn't notice how the floor creaked under me even when I wasn't moving. The forest had rewritten me. I wasn't Jonah anymore. I wore his skin, spoke in his voice, mimicked his memories. But I was a placeholder now. Vessel. And Travis. He was the next page. "You'll get used to the loops," I said, smiling gently. "Just write everything down. Helps keep things straight." He nodded, not realizing how close he already was to being forgotten. That night, he slept in the second cot, unaware of the whispering that echoed under the floorboards. I stood in the doorway and watched the forest. shifted, always shifted. But tonight it pulsed like it was alive, waiting. I felt it under my skin, in my bones, like the trees were breathing with me, or through me. At 3:03 a.m., something scraped the window. Travis stirred but didn't wake. I didn't bother turning to look. I knew what it was. I'd seen it every night since I came back. It wore my old face sometimes. Other times it had no face at all. Just a smear of memory in the shape of a man. Never came in. It didn't need to. The next morning, Travis followed me on patrol. I led him through the usual route. North Perimeter, Lake, the Eastern Clearing. He asked about the lack of animals. I told him the truth. The forest eats them. He laughed. It wasn't a joke. At the Eastern Clearing we found the circle again. Hadn't been there yesterday. But time didn't care about yesterday. Travis stood in the center and pointed at the stones. Looks like a ritual site, he joked. Yeah, I said. Or a door. To where? Ask me again tomorrow. He blinked. What? Ask me again tomorrow. He laughed again, but it was thinner this time. The wind picked up, scattering leaves. But none of them moved inside the circle. I watched him step back over the edge, and the leaves resumed blowing. He didn't notice, but they did. That night, he dreamed of fireflies spelling his name, of trees bending backward to make a path for him, of Lacey. He said her name in his sleep just once. I hadn't mentioned her, but the forest had. It remembers, not just people, but guilt, mistakes, regrets, and it uses them like keys. I woke him just before sunrise. You sleep okay? He rubbed his eyes. Yeah, just weird dreams. Do you ever dream out here? All the time. I handed him a cup of coffee. He didn't see the ash at the bottom. He drank it anyway. That day I let him lead. He felt like he was in control now. It's part of the process. The loop doesn't just trap you, it tricks you. It makes you feel like you're still choosing. By dusk he had found a new path. It wasn't on the map. He insisted we follow it. Smiled. The forest knows when they're ready. The path curved in a way that made you feel like you were always going downhill, even when you weren't. The trees grew denser. The sky vanished. The air turned thick like soup made of breath. And then we saw it. A tree older than the rest, gnarled like twisted bone. Its bark was carved with thousands of names. Jonah's name appeared 4 times. Mine just once. Travis reached out and traced a name at random. The tree groaned. I watched the ground ripple. He looked at me. Did you feel that? He nodded. Like the earth just breathed. It did. A humming began. Low at first. Then rising like a siren made of moss and rot. He turned in a circle. What is this place? I didn't answer. He backed away from the tree. And tripped over a root. Except it wasn't a root. It was a hand. Dried, curled, clutching a compass. Travis screamed. The forest listened. Then it moved. Roots wrapped around his ankles, not pulling, guiding. Toward the tree. He fought. They tightened. The humming became voices now. Whispering. Repeating one word. Again. 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 Travis looked to me. Help me. I stepped forward. Then stopped. He saw the hesitation in my eyes. No, he said, shaking his head. No, you knew. You brought me here. I did. Had to. It was the only way to leave. Not escape. Just pass it on. Travis screamed as the roots pulled him into the hollow beneath the tree. The bark split. A new name etched itself. Travis Morgan. And just like that, the forest was quiet again. I walked back to the cabin. The wind followed me like a pet. That night I slept without dreaming. And in the morning, the loop reset. But something had changed. The birds didn't sing. The coffee tasted like soil. The mirror was missing. And the radio crackled with static before a voice whispered. He'll remember you now. Froze. The forest wasn't just a loop. It was learning. And soon it wouldn't need us at all. Not to remember. Not to feed. Not even to reset. It was waking up. And the next time the sun rose, I wasn't in the cabin. I was in the tree. My body stitched into the roots. Eyes wide, mouth open. I was still alive. Watching. Waiting. The forest doesn't kill you. Keeps you. Forever. Because in the forest where time rewinds every morning, nothing ever really leaves. And nothing is ever truly forgotten.